Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's screencast. This is part of our series on teaching and learning in Falmouth Public Schools. Today we'll be focusing on science, technology, and engineering within our school district. I'm Zach Wadaker, the Director of Curriculum and Instruction for Elementary Education.
And I'm Sonia Tellier, Director of Curriculum and Instruction for Secondary Education.
Today we will be, again, looking at science and technology within the school district, and we'll be breaking our conversation into three different sections.
The first of these sections is talking about the present landscape. Where are we now? How have we gotten here is our second section on shared vision for growth and innovation. And finally, our third objective here in the screencast is strategic planning and prioritization, so we understand how we grow and how we come together as a community to support those efforts.
So we'd like to start first by talking about our present landscape. What does science and technology engineering look like in Falmouth Public Schools? And before we can talk specifically about the content, we need to talk a little bit about our instructional leadership model that we have here. At the elementary level, we started this year with a new group of 17 dynamic educators in grades 1 through 5 who serve as what we call our grade level leaders. They meet and have vertical conversations, meaning our first grade teachers get to talk with second grade and second grade to third grade about curriculum design and where the expectations are, so that way our students kind of have a fluid progression through the elementary grades. Right now, their focus is on English language arts and literacy, but certainly as we move forward with this new initiative, we'll be looking at embedding science within some of their responsibilities. Furthermore, we'll talk a little bit about the Laying the Foundation initiative that we have going on. This summer, the summer 2014, we had many educators from all of our schools participate in Laying the Foundation training. Laying the Foundation is a program that we've worked in at the high school level that has had great success, and Sonia will talk a little bit about that success, but we're trying to replicate some of that success down at the earlier grades by providing our teachers with professional development on rigorous activities, rigorous teaching practices that they can embed within our curriculum to provide our students with enhanced learning opportunities. Furthermore, the Common Core State Standards, as we've talked about in the past, require a certain attention be given to nonfiction texts. At the elementary level, previously and historically, really, it's been a huge focus on literature, those fictional texts and stories. And now we need to really understand that in order for our students and our children to be ready for college and career, that they have to have more exposure starting at the earliest grades in nonfiction texts.
And then following that, at the secondary level, we have an entire instructional leadership team, and first that we need to talk about, that supports our efforts across the district. But unique to the secondary level are our department heads. And our department heads over the past few years have transitioned from being some department heads for grades 7 and 8 specifically, and some for 9 through 12 specifically, to a model where we cover grades 7 through 12 collectively. So with that in mind, and thinking about the efforts that our department heads help to chair and steer within our greater landscape of moving forward in growth, as Zach said, we want to come back to that LTF, or Laying the Foundation initiative. This was previously regarded at the outset of our work as the pre-AP initiative, if you happen to have heard colleagues, educators within the district or others within the community talk about the effort. Really focusing in on providing students access to the content no matter where they are in terms of their abilities or levels as learners, so that all students can have a common and consistent experience in accessing content and having opportunities for success and growth. This is a particular initiative that is outlined for English, mathematics, and science across all domains. Observation and feedback, that's part of a cycle, an ongoing cycle, keeping a professional dialogue going, having educators speak with each other about both challenges that they're having and successes that they're experiencing, so that when a department head in particular as an evaluator goes in, or an assistant principal or principal goes in as an observer, they use an evaluative lens, but they're looking for strengths that they can ask educators to share with their colleagues across departments, across schools, across the district, as well as providing pointed feedback to support the development and continued growth of an educator should there be a concern. Data analysis and response, oftentimes in the broader conversation, we think about data analysis with respect to MCAS data. Certainly in the fall, Zach and I were both engaged with providing overviews and analytical breakdowns of MCAS data. Our department heads engage in those efforts as well, our principals, and we use that to plan curricula, initiatives to rethink our scope and sequence within the curriculum and respond to what we see in the data to make sure that we are providing our students, again, with those common, consistent experiences and providing every student access to the curriculum and support to find their path to success and proficiency. And finally, the last bullet here on this slide is talking about curricular fidelity. When we come together as that community of learners, we look at the standards that Massachusetts provides for us. In some cases, we look at national standards. We consider the vision within the district, and we set that scope and sequence. So the scope, the content that will be taught, and the sequence, the order in which it'll be taught, and really talking, as Zach mentioned earlier, about vertical alignment across the grades, what it looks like as students mature. And part of this effort, the department heads help us with curricular fidelity, making sure that once we set that scope and sequence, we do what we say we're going to.
So moving forward, and now that you have a better understanding of our instructional leadership structure in Falmouth, we'll talk briefly about what science day-to-day instruction looks like in kindergarten through grade 5. So, of course, our curriculum is based on the current strands of the science curriculum frameworks that the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education provides to school districts. And within that document, there are 4 major strands that districts are required to provide instruction on: earth and space sciences, life sciences, physical sciences, and technology and engineering. Our K-5 structure provides direct instruction on physical sciences, earth and space sciences, and life sciences, while embedding the technology and engineering standards within those 3 strands. So starting at the grade K level, students are exposed to a variety of topics in each of the 3 major strands that I addressed. Again, a big part of elementary education is to provide exposure to students, to build background, and to provide students with an introductory overview of topics, so that way they can, within their own minds, determine, what is of interest to them. So we do touch upon a lot of topics, including, your senses, the climate, the solar system, states of matter, balances in motion, simple machines, how animals grow and adapt, and how plants grow, and I can go on and on. But really, it's important to remember that at the elementary level, we're trying to expose our students to different content to help foster an appreciation and a love of science, and to build inquiry skills. What does it mean to question something? What does it mean to form a hypothesis and to try out some different experiments and make a conclusion? And then our hope from there is that they can move on to other levels and have more in-depth conversations. So when we start talking grade 6, instead of exposing students to such a vast amount of content, we try to focus on one strand. In 6th grade, we start with earth science, and this allows students to use the background that they developed at the elementary levels and really dig deeper into more specific content.
As Zach mentioned, as students begin to dig deeper into the more specific content, that follows through for grade 7, where when they transition to Lawrence School, their grade 7 studies focus on life science. Following that with grade 8, they finish their complement of studies with physical science. While they're enrolled in both life science in grade 7 and physical science in grade 8, students are also provided opportunities to enroll in STEM or engineering-specific courses that complement this instruction. Here we have a graphic, and we do apologize if this graphic is not clear on your screen, whether you're on a laptop, a PC, or perhaps a mobile device. We do encourage you to go out to the Falmouth High School website and access the full program of studies. This graphic is at the beginning of the section for the science department. But what this graphic offers is a visual overview of the suggested course progressions. And no student is restricted to one path on the course progression. There are opportunities for students to move among those. However, that is a conversation that they should certainly have with their classroom teacher if they're interested, their guidance counselor, and eventually their guidance counselor and classroom teacher will invite the department head into the conversation as well. So, before we go into talking specifically about the next generation science standards and then the proposed Massachusetts curriculum framework, I think it's important that we go back and, as Zach said, talk about the fact that our scope and sequence across the district provides opportunities for our students to be exposed to the domains of science, to find those aspects of science that really excite them, to engage them in inquiry, and likewise to engage them in problem solving with a number of hands on activities. The Next Generation Science Standards are a national initiative really looking at how we provide that continued inquiry, the hands on application or problem solving aspect across all sciences and all standards. So here we can see that within the NGSS or Next Generation Science Standards, they identify three dimensions or particular focal points that we need to look at. However, Massachusetts, of course, points us in a direction of being more specific.
So the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education has a draft out since 2013 of their new science and technology engineering frameworks, which embed much of the philosophical beliefs as the next generation science standards and embed some of what Sonia just talked about, those three key elements that are important as far as developing students who have a strong science background. So the Massachusetts standards really look at these 6 key shifts in science and technology engineering, and again, they're closely aligned with the NGSS.
And I think in particular, it's important for us to come in and draw your attention to number 4, focus on deeper understanding and application. I think that's something we've emphasized really well over the past couple of slides here and making our points. But then looking at that last bullet, the 6th bullet here, and talking about how these standards are coordinated with the Commonwealth's English Language Arts and Mathematics standards, as Zach has emphasized in particular in talking about the elementary efforts.
So the Next Generation Science Standards document provides this graphic that Sonia and I think really it's a great visual representation of what we mean by embedding science standards or math and ELA concept within a science curriculum.
We recognize that the purpose of this screencast is to familiarize you with our work within the Office of Curriculum Instruction, and we recognize, again, like the previous graphic showing the progressions for the high school, parts of this graphic may not be readable given the screen resolution as we put out this screencast. So we will work to add this graphic and have it available as a link on our website.
So as we move forward and we continue to have discussion about our shared vision for growth and innovation, there are a couple of things that we need to make sure that we're all in agreement of. When we look at the Massachusetts Draft Curriculum Frameworks for Science and we read the standards, we understand that those are outcomes. When you read those statements, that's what students need to be able to do and what students need to understand in a variety of different capacities. So the standards are performances or actions as a result of quality instruction. So the standards aren't activities. We use those standards to help develop our activities. And really, it's a great opportunity to look within Falmouth and look at our scientific community and see how can we develop the understanding that the state wants us to develop while also exposing our students to the great opportunities that they have within Falmouth.
And within the standards, it's particularly important that we emphasize the point that you're seeing here on the slide, because the standards provide some level of flexibility where they don't need to be taken in the exact order in which they're written. In some cases, that's at the discretion of the classroom teacher or the team devising the scope and sequence. And in particular, that brings us to the last line here on this slide. Standards are not a series of activities. They can't be used as a substitute for a unit or lesson plan.
So we've spent a little bit talking about how Massachusetts is in the process of developing new standards. And we're fortunate in some cases that some of the old language and the new language are relatively similar, but we want to emphasize and show you how there's a greater level of rigor that our students are expected to partake in and that our teachers are expected to teach. So what we're going to do now is show you the similar slide here, but what we've done is we've bolded some information and underlined some information because we really want that to stick out to you. The bold words are the verbs talk to you about what students are going to need to be able to do kind of at the end of the unit. So back in the 2006 standards related to second grade physical science, students had to sort objects by observable properties such as size, shape, color, weight, and texture. So an assessment might look like students cutting out different objects from a worksheet and then gluing them in sections based on their properties as listed there. Well, now the new language, and I want you to think about what we talked about before about the importance of incorporating English language arts and mathematics into science. Now they need to describe and classify different kinds of materials by observable properties such as color, strength, flexibility. So some of the activities are going to be the same, but when we look at the level of rigor, what they're going to need to do in order to prove proficiency is a little more rigorous, describing and classifying. And then furthermore, the same thing for third grade life science related to plants. The 2006 version asked students to recognize that plants and animals go through predictable life cycles. Again, that verb recognize is kind of ambiguous. You don't really know what's asked. The new standards are more specific, provide evidence, including through the analysis of data. So there's that math connection now. They're analyzing data that plants and animals have traits inherited from parents, and so on and so forth.
So here we take a look at one of the standards on evolution within the biology curriculum. So you see again the 2006 not draft language, the draft language is in the next column, the 2006 standard language. And it's asking students to explain, and you can see that just by looking, without even reading the text, how much more of a demand is placed on students in their new curricular framework. So here, let's look forward in the same exercise that Zach just walked you through. We spent time, again, identifying the verbs, looking at the tasks, and looking at the supporting evidence that students are required to include. And you can see how they've gone beyond explaining something that they could have done very simply, oral language, they could have talked to each other, and now they're constructing. So they can be constructing an explanation, again, based on the evidence, making that mathematical link, but in the construction, it's not limited to, in this case, writing. You can see that there are 3 subpoints, points that they have to include in those explanations, and then finally the result is the proliferation of those individuals with advantageous traits that are better able to survive and reproduce in the environment. So they're really directed towards what particular features of evolution that they need to study and then work into that constructed explanation.
So that was a very preliminary look at those standards, but we just wanted you to get a taste of how the new science standards are expected to be more rigorous, and so you can understand and appreciate the new level of knowledge that our teachers strive to get their students to know and understand. So on your screen right now, there's just some things that we really feel like we need to focus on in the Office of Curriculum and Instruction, but also in the district as a whole. Some of them we mentioned, such as the attention to nonfiction texts. We're looking to collaborate with our scientific community and also to look at the applied technology department and look at enhancing the programs that we offer to students.
In the applied technology department, we italicized the app in applied. App development is actually one of the courses featured within the catalog in that department. So we're excited to see how this really takes off in the next year. Students are going through the registration process currently at the high school. And again, we direct you towards the Falmouth High School Program of Studies to gain more insight into the department, the courses offered within the department, and any prerequisites that may be attached to those.
So now we're going to talk a little bit about strategic planning and how we prioritize what we're going to do. A little earlier in the presentation, I talked to you about the 4 major strands in grades K through 6. The new Massachusetts draft standards for science and technology have an emphasis on 3 strands in K through 5, so earth and space science, life sciences, and physical sciences, again, with teachers embedding technology and engineering. So in terms of curriculum, it's a lot of similar topics, but it now is expected to be taught at greater depth. A big change that we talked about before was that grade 6 earlier only addressed earth science. And really what we're looking to do now is continue to develop that background by providing opportunities for students in grade 6 to explore the 4 domains more specifically, or the 4 strands more specifically, rather than just one in isolation.
And again, as Zach just pointed out for grade 6, that shift carries over for grade 7, focusing on systems and cycles. So instead of focusing exclusively on life science, it's focusing on systems and cycles across the sciences. Same thing in the shift for grade 8. Again, instead of focusing solely on physical sciences, it's focusing on cause and effect relationships, again, across the sciences, and also included in grades 6, 7, and 8. Beyond just this sort of spiraling of the science content, you have to go back and remember earlier in the screencast we talked about there's applications for math and English embedded in all of these.
And that's really a key difference between old curriculum development, where sometimes things were taught exclusively in isolation, and now we're seeing that importance for career and college readiness for students to see that there's an overlap.
So here we come to the high school level, and again, thinking back to that graphic we looked at with the course progressions, the standards, the Massachusetts draft standards offers us information regarding how we develop year-long enrollments, year-long courses, and these are the 5 areas on which it concentrates, really leaving us in a position where we don't deviate much in course offerings, but we do bolster the content and the delivery through instruction within those courses in light of the cross-cutting concepts and some of these other focal points that we've discussed.
So knowing where we are and knowing where we need to go, we now need to talk about how we're going to get there. And we call that our strategic planning and prioritization. So one major component that's needed is professional development. Certainly, as we have the discussions about the rigor that's expected of students, we need to provide opportunities for our teachers to talk with one another and talk to experts in the field of STEM education at the elementary level in particular. Furthermore, we're going to respond to trends in data, and that's going to look more like the course offerings at grade 7 and grade 8 in terms of not being so narrow in the content delivery. And furthermore, we're going to look at providing graduate level courses to teachers within the district specific to STEM.
Picking up here and talking about the increased attention to technology, we just highlighted the applied technology department that's growing at the high school, and talking about where we're engaged in the course enrollment process right now, and we're looking forward to seeing how that comes together. And then the point here about digital literacies. And if you were able to view our previous screencast where we looked at PARC, we talked a little bit about digital literacies in terms of digital composing and how technology is reshaping the writing process. But that carries over digital literacies in terms of students' abilities to go in and use various technologies to complete the application, the inquiry processes, and that data analysis themselves within labs or other types of learning situations.
And certainly we want to talk about how everything that we do in Falmouth Public Schools, certainly within our Office of Curriculum and Instruction, is deeply rooted in our strategic plan.
So here you can see there are the 3 overarching areas within the strategic plan, the objectives. And while we didn't bring the entire objective for teaching and learning, access and equity, or for community engagement into this slide, we did want to touch on those that really spoke to the work and the efforts that we're applying to the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, or the STEM focus that we're looking at. In particular, in this screencast, it's science. One piece I want to point out here in the bottom is that community engagement. And on the last slide, though we didn't talk about it, we also referenced strategic partnerships. We want to keep a focus on college and career readiness. We'd like to increase our collaboration with professionals in the science community, bringing them into the classrooms at the elementary level, and then working to flip that and getting students at the secondary level out into these institutions, into the labs, getting more hands-on experience and being exposed to the sophisticated technologies and efforts in those situations.
And again, as Sonia just talked about, our strategic plan really does guide the work that we do, and with the support of Dr. Gifford, who is very supportive of the STEM initiatives in Falmouth, and that certainly is one of her areas of focus. We hope to push this initiative forward in a systematic and in an effective manner for all the students of Falmouth Public Schools.
So finally, as we close this screencast, we leave you with this thought, that we as a community of learners together have the potential to achieve something great, something that will ensure our students learn to transfer content and skills, to craft new meaning of what they learn, and to be leaders of innovation, and to achieve high achievement scores on standardized tests as a result of the depth of their learning as well as their engagement in it. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for joining us, and we hope you join us on other webcasts coming up soon. Whatever. Some of the stuff I butchered is fine. What am I calling this? FP. No, teaching and learning.
Yeah.
Science, STEM.
I have to go to